Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for stopping by today. I've been following the Watts case since the very beginning, and it's hard not to notice that this case in particular has brought out a lot of internet trolls. So in today's video, we are going to delve into the psychological characteristics of an internet troll. So imagine you're walking in a crowded mall and some stranger yells a cruel insult at you. So you would think to yourself, who does that? Well, what kind of person is this? Well, victims of online trolling also experience the same type of bewilderment. You see, internet trolling behavior is very perplexing because there's an absence of real life connection or interaction, and there are no external rewards. And so some coordinated trolling campaigns do have a clear agenda, but the motivations of the everyday troll, it remains to be puzzling. In the early years of the internet, posting insults and profanity was actually called flaming, and its more aggravated form was called shitposting. Next, the term hit and run posting was used to identify trolling in which someone posts something offensive and then disappears. And then we have online shaming and cyberbullying, in which the target is publicly humiliated or harassed. I think it would be a serious mistake for you to think that trolling is simply a virulent form of self-righteousness. Trolling is much more than that, because trolls don't leave any doubt that they hate their targets very much and that they want to hurt them. Trolling overall is described as a pattern of repetitive behavior in which a person purposely provokes or upsets people online. They'll post abusive, insulting, inflammatory, extraneous, off-topic, or digressive messages in online communities in order to provoke and distress people for their own pleasure. Trolling shares some similarities with other forms of online abuse, such as cyberbullying and cyberstalking. However, unlike cyberbullying, which typically occurs between people who know each other, trolls seem drawn towards targets or random internet users that they don't know personally. Research shows us that gender, particularly males, trait psychopathy, and trait sadism significantly help us to predict the kind of person who will engage in trolling behavior. Trait psychopathy is characterized by the person having deficits in empathy, little self-control. They're typically deceitful and callous. They have an unemotional interpersonal style, and their behavior is typically impulsive. Now, research also shows us that online trolls have a distinct personality type, and they have some different psychological quirks that help us to explain their behavior. Trolls often possess one or all of the malevolent traits in what we call the dark tetrad of personality characteristics. And those are narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and sadism. So a troll's narcissistic traits are that they're manipulative and easily angered, and they're especially angered when they don't receive the attention that they consider to be their birthright. The Machiavellianism trait is seen in a troll because they're focused on their own interests, and they will manipulate and deceive and exploit people to achieve whatever it is their goal is. The psychopathy is typically demonstrated in their impulsive behavior, their completely self-centered perspective, and they'll chronically violate legal and social rules, and they'll lack empathy and they'll have no guilt whatsoever. And finally, the sadistic traits of the troll are that they enjoy inflicting pain and humiliation. They enjoy inflicting suffering on other people. So most people understand that a troll's motives are for amusement or to annoy others, to gain attention, and definitely to disrupt a discussion. But I believe that their motives are much more sinister. See, trolling for them is their way of demonstrating their numerical strength, and this constitutes an indirect threat that they will prevail by their sheer numbers, but not by their merit. So that is why conventional wisdom tells us don't feed the trolls and don't respond. And that has had very little effect on the trolls. You see, you can ignore an isolated troll, but you cannot ignore thousands of them. And since many of them contain implicit and explicit threats of violence, those threats need to be recognized and, if necessary, reported to law enforcement. And I want you to understand that for trolls, the online virtual world is really just an extension of their real world. And so the personality traits of a troll reveal to us that they are dangerously depraved people, and their viciousness is agenda driven. And you understand that whatever they write it deliberately. It's not that they're writing something on impulse. And because of this, what they write puts much more purpose behind it. So you can see that the dark tetrad of personality traits are typically seen in a troll's behavior. Some more examples would be their psychopathy is seen in their antisocial behavior and their selfishness and their callousness and their lack of remorse. And the Machiavellianism is seen in their manipulation and exploitation of other people, their complete absence of morality, and their higher level of self-interest. Their narcissistic traits are seen in their grandiosity, their egotism, their pride, and their complete lack of empathy. Trolls also typically present with quite a healthy dose of sadism, and that is cruel and demeaning behavior towards other people. They intentionally want to inflict some kind of physical, sexual, or psychological pain and suffering on their target or their victim in order to assert power and dominance for their own pleasure and enjoyment. And it's the anonymity of the internet that leads to the toxic online disinhibition that we see going on with the trolling on the internet. And it makes the darker side of the troll's personality so much more obvious. I want you to understand that trolls aspire to violence, and they want to cause the most amount of damage that they possibly can in the online environment. They want to promote their antipathetic emotions of disgust and outrage, and that gives them a morbid sense of pleasure. And there are actually several types of trolls on the internet, and their techniques, the techniques that they use, the way they attack people, those come in many forms. For example, there are what we call ad hominem attacks, and this is where a troll attacks it's a direct attack against the person rather than an argument that the person is putting forward, because the troll can't counter with any merit of their own. So they try to fabricate some type of negative, negative spin about the person, which is usually completely unrelated to the matter at hand, to the discussion. So simply put, an ad hominem attack is when a troll tries to assassinate a person's character. And trolls do not require any proof of their allegations. So if it's a female that they're attacking, the ad hominem attack would take the form of character assassination that can cover everything from body shaming to the person's personal life. Anything that the troll's female target has achieved in her life by her own hard work and intellect is maliciously attributed by the troll to the female having achieved those things by exploiting their sexuality. There are also trolls that we call the dismissive types, and they will attempt to dismiss their victims' achievements in order to avoid any type of argument. For example, they'll say, well, who does he or she think she is? I don't have to listen to what they're saying. Why should I believe what they're saying? And there are also trolls who their attacks are driven by their own inferiority complex. These trolls are typically poorly educated with a lower intellectual level, and usually you can spot this type of troll by the mistakes in their language that they use, or their grammar, or their spelling. And it's because of their own inferiority complex that they hate a person who puts forth any kind of logic or knowledge or shows any type of education, because to a troll, any educated or successful person makes them feel deeply inferior. An example of the type of dialogue that you might see from an inferior troll is to comment that you need to keep your knowledge to yourself because they have no use for your knowledge. They may go on to accuse you of being qualified in one field, but not an expert in another field. So in other words, what the troll is saying is that their target has to have a PhD in every field or topic that the troll comments in, or else the troll will disqualify any comments that the person makes. But on the other hand, the troll, being poorly educated, thinks that they have the absolute right to comment on everything. Trolls also use labeling as a form of summary dismissal of their target. And as you can guess, there's no shortage of labels to choose from. You know, they'll call you a fake or a con or a leftist or a liberal or whatever they come up with. But when a troll labels a person, what they are really saying is that that person must be wrong because the troll has labeled them, and they have no need to explain further. Then there are the trolls who use what we call diversionary or wrong fact attacks. And these trolls specialize in claiming authority by posting completely bogus facts or quotes, and they attribute them to some famous personality or some famous text. And you have to be careful because a troll will switch tracks faster than you can imagine. And they do this to avoid any argument based on merit. So they'll suddenly post something completely off topic, and it'll usually be something very provocative. And if unsuspecting people will typically fall into this type of trap. There are also trolls that use sexual innuendos. They target typically women, and they use these innuendos as a diversionary tactic. And for obvious reasons, these innuendos instantly draw the attention of other perverted vultures. So for this type of troll, the woman is nothing more than her physical appearance, her body. And they're obsessed with the way their victim looks. And if by chance the victim appears to be a beautiful person, the troll will accuse the victim of photoshopping their image, insinuating that being beautiful is somehow a crime. There are also trolls who make threats of violence against their victims, and sometimes they threaten sexual violence. These trolls use a more aggravated form of sexual innuendo. They will freely make threats of in the form of virtual rape on the internet platform, where they don't run the risk of ever being caught or prosecuted because they are anonymous. So by threatening mainly women and fantasizing about that, this type of troll will derive a perverse form of vicarious pleasure out of this kind of trolling. And then there are the trolls who make threats of abuse of the legal process. They threaten that they will launch numerous legal cases against the victim and threaten to ruin the victim's life by running around, making accusations to law enforcement or lawyers or the court system. And so research shows that trolls openly admit that they get pleasure from trolling, and research also confirms that online trolling is often motivated by the sadistic enjoyment. And so, as such, sadism is the personality trait that is found to be the best predictor of trolling. The other trait is that the troll uses what we call harm rationalization. It's also known as moral disengagement, and it gives the troll permission to hurt other people without feeling any guilt. And by downplaying the consequences of their actions, trolling becomes an enjoyable game that they perceive isn't hurting anyone. And even on the off chance that they do hurt someone, they will minimize their blame in the situation. So the two most important factors that determine the psychology of trolling is that the troll gets sadistic pleasure from trolling, and they use harm rationalization to eliminate their guilt. And this combination of context and character really does produce the perfect storm for their hurtful behavior. So what does one do when confronted with the troll? Well, it's understandable that a person would want to retaliate against the vile troll. But if you do that, you're only going to put yourself in a conflict that you cannot win. The best advice is to never engage with the troll. Keep silent, say nothing, do not respond. Because what the troll wants the most is for you to respond. They crave confirmation that they have been successful in causing you harm or distress. Now, there are many platforms that have a quote, report abuse function. And so my advice is report the person if you can. Definitely document what's happening, how they're attacking you, and then delete their comments. You know, there's a lot of hatred out there on the internet, and, you know, we can't wish that it would go away. And it appears that it's going to be nearly impossible to eliminate the fact that people are anonymous on the internet. And we can't at this time even legislate against it. So, but I think that recognizing the personality traits of the trolls, understanding their psychological insecurities and the techniques that they use to troll and attack victims, it can help you to cope with their malicious behavior. So that wraps it up for this video. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch. Thank you so much.